Welcome back to the deep dive. We got a really interesting stack of sources you sent over about a critical security flaw.
Yeah, this one is a classic.
It really is. We're going to dive deep into exactly how something that's supposed to, keep your machine running smoothly could actually become the perfect Trojan horse for a total system takeover.
It's a remarkable illustration of that old cybersecurity maxim. Trust, really, is the biggest vulnerability.
How so?
Well, when you give a piece of software elevated permissions to do its job, the slightest misstep in its logic can transform a benign utility into a weapon.
Absolutely. So our focus today is rooted in a security report. It was published on December 22, 2025 by Jason Davies.
Mm-hmm.
And the subject is a critical flaw they found in a super popular application, Trend Micro Cleaner 1 Pro.
Right.
So our mission today is to unpack the really intricate details of this vulnerability. It's officially labeled CVE-2025-53503. We want to understand how this specific type of flaw provides a shortcut to just unrestricted control over a system.
And the official name, it really tells you almost everything you need to know about the attack vector.
What's that?
It's a link following Local Privilege Escalation vulnerability.
Okay, let's break that down.
So local means the attacker has to already be on your machine in some capacity. And privilege escalation means their goal is to trade their low-level access for the master keys.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit more. That term, Local Privilege Escalation, or LPE, for you listening, what does that actually mean in the context of this vulnerability?
LPE is, think of it as the attacker's second act.
Okay.
When you log into Windows or macOS, you have certain permissions, right? You can run Chrome, manage your documents, maybe install some apps.
But you can't touch the really deep stuff.
Exactly. You can't modify the core of the operating system, the kernel, the driver files. That's low privilege. An LPE vulnerability is a bug that lets an attacker jump from that restricted user space directly to the highest authority level.
That sounds incredibly serious. But the source material is very careful to mention a really crucial prerequisite for the specific CVE.
Right.
An attacker has to first get the ability to execute low-privileged code on the target system.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't some attack launched from across the internet. The attacker is already in the building.
That's a good way to put it. And that observation often leads people to think, well, if they're already in, how bad can it be?
And the answer is?
The answer is dramatically worse. A remote code execution, an RCE, that's often the loudest type of attack, the initial breach. But LPE is the tool for persistence and for total data exfiltration.
So why is that jump from low-level access to system-level control so vital for an attacker if they already have that initial foothold?
Because that initial foothold is often flimsy. It might be a piece of malware that's stuck in a sandbox, or maybe it's a process running under a user profile that can't survive a reboot.
So it's temporary.
Very. The moment they achieve LPE and get system access, that low-level access transforms into permanent, undetectable persistence. They can install rootkits, they can steal credentials from other users on the machine, and just siphon off everything.
It's the difference between being a temporary guest and becoming the invisible owner of the property.
Exactly. And the target here is Trend Micro Cleaner 1 Pro. We're talking about a huge installed base of potentially vulnerable systems.
All just waiting for that initial low-level access to be leveraged against them.
Precisely. And that leads us to the critical design question. Why was a simple cleanup tool running with the kind of high-level authority that made this exploit possible in the first place?
This is where it gets really interesting because the source pinpoints the exact weak spot. The flaw is buried deep within the junk files cleanup functionality.
Mm-hmm.
Why on earth does deleting temporary files require a program to operate at the highest level of trust?
This takes us right to the principle of least privilege, or POL-P.
Which basically says you should only have the bare minimum permissions you need to do your job.
Right, for software, for users, for everything. But a cleanup utility, to be effective, needs to clear junk from all over the system. That means accessing directories that belong to other users or system-wide temp folders that normal accounts just can't touch.
So, to get that comprehensive cleanup, the developers give it elevated privileges. They run it as a background service with system authority.
They give it the skeleton key to the entire operating system just so it can take out the trash.
And in this case, that system authority was catastrophically abused.
It was. The mechanism detailed in the source exploits that trust using a really sophisticated path manipulation technique. It involves something called junctions.
Okay, let's nail that definition. What exactly is a junction? This seems to be the core of the whole thing.
A junction is a specialized Windows construct. It's not like a simple shortcut. A junction transparently redirects an entire directory path to a completely different location on the file system.
And the operating system just follows it.
The OS, and crucially the high-privilege Cleaner 1 Pro service, sees the junction and thinks it's the original directory. It doesn't know it's being redirected.
So let me see if I've got this. The attacker knows the Cleanup Pro service is about to delete files in a specific junk folder.
A folder the attacker can access and manipulate.
Right. But instead of putting junk in there, the attacker uses a junction to point that path somewhere else entirely, somewhere sensitive.
That's the high-level idea, yes.
Mhm.
The attacker creates a temporary directory they control, plants a junction inside it, and then triggers the cleanup. The system privilege service starts its routine, sees the path it's supposed to clean, follows that junction.
And is redirected to a critical protected system folder, like a directory with crucial DLLs or registry files.
Exactly. Somewhere they normally couldn't touch.
And the source also implies there's a timing element here. It's not just as simple as setting a trap, right? It's a race condition.
That's the real insight into the complexity of this exploit, yeah. This is what's known as a time of check to time of use attack, or TOCTU. The attacker has to place that junction after the trusted service has checked the file path, but before it actually executes the deletion command.
So there's this tiny window of opportunity.
A tiny window. If they miss it, the attack fails. It requires the attacker to monitor the service's behavior and execute their commands with microsecond precision.
Wow. It's an incredibly sophisticated abuse of trust. You're using the service's own speed and logic against it. By manipulating that path, you force this system-level process to do your bidding.
And your bidding is to delete arbitrary files.
Which is the key.
It is. Arbitrary file deletion under the system context is functionally the same as code execution. If I can delete any file on your system, I can delete a crucial system DLL, wait for the system to crash or for a service to restart, and then quickly replace it with a malicious one under my low-privileged account.
And the next time that service runs,
It runs my code.
that leads us right to the scale of the damage. The final consequence, as stated in the report, is that the attacker can execute arbitrary code in the context of system.
And we really need to spend a moment clarifying just how terrifying context of system really is.
It's more than just being an administrator, right?
Oh, much more. Most people think administrator is the highest level. You can install software, change settings, but system is the operating system itself. It's the authority level that the kernel, core processes, and device drivers run under.
It's the God mode for the machine.
It is. Achieving system access means an attacker bypasses all standard security restrictions. An administrator is still subject to some system policies. A process running a system is not.
Well, what can they do?
Install undetectable kernel-level malware, permanently disable your security software, steal credentials right out of protected memory, encrypt or exfiltrate your data without any notification at all. If an attacker gets system, your machine is no longer yours, period.
It paints a very clear picture of why LPEs are so critical, even with that prerequisite. They turn a nuisance into a permanent, devastating compromise.
And it highlights a recurring theme in cybersecurity. The biggest risks often come from subtle design flaws in trusted, high-privileged software, not always the newest zero-day.
Okay, let's move to the practical information. The good news is that Trend Micro did respond. They have issued an update to correct this vulnerability.
Yes, which is critical.
For anyone using Cleaner 1 Pro, patching is not optional here. It's absolutely mandatory.
Absolutely. The source directed us to the official advisory from Trend Micro. Anyone running this should look for the article TMKA-12951. That has all the verified details on the corrected versions. This patch effectively closes that junction manipulation loophole.
Now, to put this specific CVE, this 2025-53503, into a broader context, the source material mentioned related topics like remote code execution, or RCE. How should you, the listener, contrast this local attack with an RCE?
Think of RCE as the siege engine. It's the method used to breach the castle walls from the outside. It's a primary attack, requires no prior access.
And this LP?
This LPE, CVE 2025-53503, is the internal land grab. It's a secondary attack vector.
The RCE gets the attacker into the house. The LPE gets them into the vault.
That's a perfect way to put it. Modern, sophisticated attacks almost always involve this two-step process. First, RCE, or a phishing email, delivers that low-level access. Second, an LPE bug like this one is used to solidify control and get the power they need.
Whether that's for ransomware or espionage.
Exactly. Recognizing that distinction is key to building a good defense. You need strong defenses for both your perimeter and your interior.
And it forces us back to that first question about the principle of least privilege, doesn't it? We have to constantly ask why our utility software needs the keys to the kingdom in the first place.
That really is the enduring lesson here. If the developers had enforced PoLP rigorously, if the junk cleaner only had permission to clean specific isolated temp folders and nothing else, this entire attack would have been impossible.
It wouldn't have had the power to delete those critical system files.
It just wouldn't.
So let's wrap this up with the key takeaway. The big insight here is that even utility software, stuff designed to help you, can harbor these incredibly complex, high-impact flaws,
Right.
especially when they operate with such elevated permissions.
Patching is the immediate fix, of course, but since this whole thing requires that initial low-privilege code execution to even start, the most fundamental defense is preventing that front door from ever being opened.
Right, the sources mentioned other threats like credential stuffing, phishing scams. If the attacker's success depends on getting that first foot in the door, what's the single foundational step a user should focus on to disrupt that whole attack chain?
It really comes down to credential hygiene and zero trust behaviors,
Meaning,
meaning you secure your logins, strong, unique passwords paired with multi-factor authentication everywhere you can use it. And you have to be relentlessly vigilant against phishing and suspicious downloads. If you make that initial breach exponentially harder, if the attacker can't even get that limited foothold,
then it doesn't matter how critical the LPE vulnerability is.
it remains unexploitable. The best defense against privilege escalation is a locked front door and an educated user who knows not to let the attacker into the waiting room in the first place.